Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Woollard, and I'm the Associate Director of the Medical Physics Residency Program at The Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. And today I'd like to provide an overview of our Medical Physics Residency Program. Here's an outline of my presentation today. I'll start out with a brief program history. Um, I'll follow that up with a more in-depth look at our program structure. I know that's probably what's most interesting to most. I'll follow that with a look at how we evaluate our program and alter our curriculum based on feedback received. Next, I'll just briefly mention some of the additional opportunities available to medical physics residents in our department, including didactic opportunities, involvement in clinical projects, and teaching opportunities. And finally, at the end, I'll post a slide that gives you links to our webpage, which will have a lot more information on the topics that I briefly discussed today. So let's start out with a little bit of history of our program. Our program has been around a while. It's been in place since 2003, and we have 28 medical physics graduates so far. In 2011, our program transitioned from being clinic-based to being under the guidance of the Graduate Medical Education Office, which is the same office that oversees the medical residency program. So it puts us on par with the medical residency program. Dr. Gupta, shown here on the right, has been the program director since 2003. So since our program's start, so there's good continuity of leadership. I joined as associate director in 2011. I helped develop the program prior to that, but formally was appointed associate director in 2011. Our program received the initial CAMPEP accreditation in 2012. We received a 5-year reaccreditation in December of 2016. Then again, another 5-year reaccreditation in 2021. So we're currently good to go until December of 2026. And in fact, reaccreditation activities have already started for us for getting reaccredited for the next cycle. Our residency program has grown over the years. We started out with two residency positions, so we would take one resident per year. In 2012, we grew that to 4 total residents, or 2 per year. And starting this year, we'll expand even further. We're planning on recruiting 3 residents per year starting with this cycle. So we'll grow to 6 total resident positions. Our medical physics residency program is very well integrated with the radiation oncology residency program. In fact, this is a mandate from our department, and we share didactics with the medical residents. Dosimetry, physics, radiobiology, clinical didactics are all shared. And that's a great opportunity for us for the medical residents to interact with the medical physics residents. Once that interaction occurs, we find there's lots of collaboration that comes from that further on clinical projects and things like that. That's what we want to see. Here's a slide that shows our application statistics over the years. You could see it shows the total number per year, the total number of applicants, the total number that we interview, and the total number that we accept. And you can see, as I mentioned before, early on, 2004 to 2011, we took 1 per year, 1 resident per year. Then we grew that to 2 per year, and that'll go to 3 per year from this cycle on. But just in general, kind of looking at the statistics, you can see typically our program gets around 100 applications per year. We'll interview 20-ish and take 2 or now 3. So next, let's take a look at the program structure. Our residency program is a clinically focused 2-year program. Our goal is to generate medical physicists that are ready to head out into the clinic and perform as independently as possible. And our program consists of several clinical rotations, probably like all the other programs. We have an orientation rotation, which is always a month long and involves the residents rotating through the various clinical sites in our department. They'll spend time at the Linacs and CT, in Brachy, at Gamma Knife. And the purpose of this rotation is for you to become familiar with our clinical workflows and get to know the staff. It's a big department here. It takes a while to get to know everyone, so we spend a month getting you up to speed. We have external beam and longitudinal QA type rotations. These would be involved with Linac QA, CT Sim QA, and those sorts of activities. We have a proton rotation where you spend time at our proton facility. We have brachytherapy and SRS rotations where you actually are in the clinic performing brachytherapy planning and helping with treatment, standing at Linac SRS cases, and those sorts of physics activities. We have dosimetry rotations where you learn to, if you need to, you learn to plan and also how to assess plans and improve plans. We have a shielding and commissioning rotation where you do a shielding analysis for an existing vault. And also what I think is more fun is you do commissioning. You get to pick a beam energy and commission the treatment planning system for that beam energy and collect all the data you want on our training Linac. So you get some hands-on experience in that rotation. We have an administration and professional rotation. This is where you follow our chief physicist, Melindu, around to all the administrative and professional type activities he does. So you get to see that side of the medical physics profession, in addition to the clinical activities. We have an elective rotation where this one's only a month long. You get to do a little mini research project, either something of your own that you would like to investigate, or maybe join one of the existing projects that our physicists have going on. At the end of your 2 years, you'll do a 1-month clinical rotation where you will serve as a medical physicist and work in sometime in our big clinic, in our main office, in our main campus, in a big clinic, and also maybe spend some time at one of our smaller satellites at our breast center, which gives you a flavor of what it's like in a smaller clinic. We also have an educational conference / journal club rotation. All of the rotations require completion of some didactic readings as well as clinical competencies related to that particular rotation. Most rotations are 1 to 3 months in duration. If I look back here, orientation is 1 month, administrative and professional is 1 month, elective is 1 month. But the real clinical rotations, brachytherapy, SRS, those are 2 months, and dosimetry is 3 months, right? So the real clinical hands-on rotations, we give you a little bit more time there. Okay? We also have 2 continuous rotations. That would be this longitudinal QA. This just runs continuously for your entire time here, and this is covers things like the Linac QA that you'll get to perform routinely. And also our journal club rotation runs continuously because the journal club activities just continue through the year. You'll also note that we have some A and B rotations. This is a design we've had since we started. I know if I had a 2-year residency program and I had brachytherapy in my first 2 months, at the end of 2 years, I wouldn't remember any brachytherapy. So we felt it was better to revisit some of these heavily clinical topics. So brachytherapy has an A and B, SRS has an A and B, dosimetry has an A and B. And what happens is in these A and B rotations is most of the time, the clinical competencies in each of the A and B rotations are similar. It's the same type of activities. It's the level of responsibility that changes. In the A rotations, the resident is expected to observe and assist with those competencies, whereas in the B rotations, now you've seen it, you're expected to be able to assist with these competencies as well as perform them independently. So we think seeing some of these things twice really helps solidify the concepts and the procedures. As the program expands to 6 residents, we've put in a lot of work of how we're going to do this to avoid resident overlap in some of these clinical rotations. We really want the resident to have every opportunity to be involved in the clinic and be hands-on with these clinical activities. So like I said, development is underway, but we will probably utilize some of our nearby OSU facilities, the Stephanie Spielman Comprehensive Breast Center, um, and the JOC, um, for some of these other rotations, um, to minimize this overlap. And both of these, it's not like these are satellites that are far away. The SSCBC is, I don't know, at most 3/4 of a mile away. And the James Outpatient Care, the JOC, is about the same distance. So these are easily within walking distance. It's not like you have to travel far away. So some of our rotations, you may get to travel to these facilities to do some of the competencies to help give you more opportunity. If we do have to have overlap in rotations, which as we move to 6, we may have to have some, we'll try our best to keep that overlap between junior and senior residents, right? So that we don't have people fighting for the exact same things. All of our clinical rotations utilize what we call the primary secondary preceptor model. And what this is for each rotation, you'll have a primary preceptor and several secondary preceptors. And so typically this primary preceptor, it's a fixed preceptor. I'm a primary preceptor for external beam and brachytherapy. So what the primary preceptor does is they meet with the resident weekly to discuss clinical competencies, maybe go through some of the didactic readings, and help ensure that that resident is progressing through the rotation adequately. The secondary preceptors, those are the clinical physicists that are out in the clinic that you're doing your competencies with. So in brachytherapy, you'll go to the brachytherapy suite, you'll help plan a cylinder, or you'll plan a cylinder. You'll work with one of our clinical physicists. They'll teach you how to do it. They'll watch you do it, give you feedback. Then once a month, you'll meet with your primary preceptor, say me, and I'll say, okay, tell me what you did. And you'll say, oh, I did a cylinder. And I'll say, tell me how you planned it. And we'll step through it and make sure that you're tying back all those clinical activities that you did to the didactics underlying those clinical activities. And we'll also review your competencies and readings and make sure you're progressing through the rotation. Most of our rotations have an end of rotation oral exam. I know that sounds scary, but it's not. So what we find is you guys have taken written exams all your life, but oral exams are a little bit different beast. So we like to have these end of rotation oral exams to get you practicing the oral exam style in preparation for the ABR Part 3. So it won't quite be the same format as the ABR exam, but it'll be kind of similar in that it's an oral exam. And don't fret, decision as to whether or not you successfully complete a rotation is not based solely on your performance on this exam. We look at how you did in the clinic over the rotation, as well as how you did on the exam, go from there to see whether or not you successfully completed that rotation, or if there's other things we'd like you to study. Here's a sample rotation. As you can see, as I mentioned, we break our rotations into these 1 or 2 or 3 month chunks. So this is a typical layout of what you'd get. You'd rotate through orientation, external beam, brachy, and in the meantime, these longitudinal QA rotations are continuous. So you're doing some of those activities all year long. Like I said, those are LINAC QA type things that you'll be helping with anyway, in addition to your primary clinical rotation. And this is just a sample. Obviously, with multiple residents, everyone can't have the same rotation schedule, so we have to rotate things around a little bit to avoid that overlap we talked about. Okay, next let's talk about our program development and growth. Our program is continuously developing and restructuring to meet changing needs. And a lot of the changes that go into our program are based, actually all of the changes are based on resident and staff feedback. And this feedback is collected at multiple places. Primary preceptors will have weekly meetings with the residents, and they may get feedback there. You know, as I go through the as the resident goes through the rotation, they may say, hey, this competency is extremely hard to get, or what can I do to get this type of clinical knowledge? And we may change things. Or what happens more often is we have those didactic readings in our rotations, and maybe a new task report comes out that supersedes the old one. So, the resident says, hey, or the primary preceptor says, hey, here's a new task group report. Let's read this instead. And then we'll upgrade the rotation. Okay. We also get feedback at the end of rotation meetings / oral exams. The primary preceptors will collect all this feedback. We also once a year send out staff and resident surveys asking for feedback on the program. Once we get all this feedback, once a year, we have a curriculum subcommittee that meets. They look at all this feedback, and then they review all rotation competencies and update or restructure if needed. Okay, this is done annually. Some of the recent changes that have come, some from feedback, but some from just the growth of our department. We recently included the proton rotation. Once our proton therapy facility went live a year or so ago, we added that proton therapy rotation. The shielding and commissioning rotation has kind of evolved over time to being, as I mentioned, more hands-on. The residents get to independently perform a treatment planning system commissioning for one beam energy, utilizing the training LINAC and our training ARIA environment. Also, as I mentioned, as our department expands, we've started getting medical physics assistants. So the chief residents get to apply some of those things they learned during their administrative and professional rotation. They get to help out with scheduling, with onboarding and scheduling, QA responsibilities between the residents and the MPAs. So they get a bit of that administrative type experience. Next, I mentioned that I would discuss some of the opportunities available to the medical physics resident in our department. The first of those is the didactic opportunities. There's no shortage of these. I've kind of divided them up here. The didactic opportunities that are focused solely on the physics residents versus those that are combined, where the medical and physics residents are together. Some of the specific physics resident didactic opportunities are our weekly physics meeting. We have a physics education conference, part of that journal club. We have, as I mentioned, most of our rotations have an end of rotation oral exam. Once a year, our residents take the RAFEX exam, as well as once a year, we do an ABR style mock oral exam, where we try and simulate the ABR Part 3 exam as much as possible and put you through that experience. So you get to experience that. And also there's a ton of OSU classes that are available for residents to take if needed, right? And this would be evaluated at the start of your program. If you really need a diagnostic imaging class, those are available here, and we might decide you need that and sign you up for that. Some of the combined didactic opportunities, I alluded to this earlier. We have a physics, dosimetry, and radiobiology didactic series. So the physicists will present lectures on physics. The dosimetrists will come in and present lectures on dosimetry. Our radiobiology staff will come over and give radiobiology lectures. And these are open to the medical residents as well as the physics residents. And we encourage attendance at those. The attendings will also present clinical didactics, where they'll go through disease sites treatment. We encourage our physicists to sit in on those. We have all the other usual things. We have chart rounds, visiting professors presenting their research, M&M, teaching conferences. All of these are available and open to the residents. Additional opportunities other than the didactics, there's multiple opportunities for the residents to get involved in clinical projects and research. Um, we try and limit this so that it doesn't become too much of a burden, right? We have 2 years for you to learn the clinical aspects of being a medical physicist, but we do want you to get a taste for how to perform clinical projects or do research. So that's the purpose of that elective rotation. So we have a list of ongoing projects that our physicists are investigating, and the residents may pick one of those, or come up with their own idea, or work with the radiation oncology residents on something they want to investigate. Um, so those projects are available. I mentioned we have the elective rotation, which gives you 1 month of dedicated time just to do that sort of project. Typically, this will extend beyond 1 month unofficially. So you get 1 month of dedicated time. After that, you don't get dedicated time. But if you want to continue the research at night or on the weekends, most residents do. And this would then typically culminate with the residents submitting this research or this clinical project, a write-up to AAPM, um, and get a presentation or a poster at the annual AAPM meeting. Another opportunity is teaching. We have a lot of teaching programs here. We have a radiation therapy program within the university. We have a dosimetry program. We have the medical physics program. We have the medical resident program. There's a lot of teaching that goes on. So there's a lot of opportunity for the interested medical physics resident to get into teaching. And in fact, our residents are integrated into our QA therapy QA class, and that they help run the QA labs at the training LINAC. So lots of opportunities to get involved didactically, research-wise, and teaching-wise, in addition to the clinical exposure that you'll get. All right, that was a very quick overview of our program. Here's a link to our program website that will have, it will discuss in much more detail all those things I mentioned, as well as it contains a copy of our current program handbook, which talks about our program and also provides detailed descriptions of each clinical rotation. It has information and pictures of our current residents and alumni, key contact information, myself, Melinda, and Marcy, and a lot of general information regarding our department and our physics group. Anything beyond that, we also have links here to the GME office, if you're interested in that, and information on what it's like to live in Columbus. That's all I have for my brief overview. Thank you for spending time listening to my presentation.